living with Erb'S palsy. A medical error shaped my future. Daily tasks turn into exhausting battles, while emotional struggles and societal pity weigh heavy. Can I find acceptance and purpose despite my challenges? What does it truly mean to live without pity? Imagine attempting to brush your hair, but your hand will not cooperate. Imagine trying to prepare a simple meal, but every movement becomes a painful challenge. Imagine enjoying art, music, or any other hobby, but each effort serves as a reminder that your body does not function as it should. These are not merely fleeting moments. This is my life with Erb'S palsy. Daily challenges. The simplest things become a battle every morning when I awaken. The first obstacle I encounter is pain. It is not just mild discomfort. It is a sharp, electric pain that sometimes jolt me from my sleep. The stiffness and weakness in my arm make even the simplest tasks getting dressed, tying my hair exhausting and time-consuming. Cooking, for instance, is not merely a pleasurable activity for me. It is a test of patience and endurance. Chopping vegetables, holding pots, or even just stirring a pan can be tiring and painful. Every task necessitates planning, adaptation, and a new strategy to overcome the challenges my body presents. Pity, the feeling that bothers me more than pain. If there is one thing I loathe more than the pain itself, it is the pity reflected in people's eyes. There is nothing more frustrating than witnessing that look of "poor you" or hearing the unnecessary sympathy in their voices. For example, I love video games, but I seldom share with others that I play. Why? Because I know what follows. As soon as they discover I have Erb'S palsy, their behavior shifts. They begin to make things easier for me, avoid genuine competition, and treat me as though I require special kindness. That is not what I desire. I do not want to win anything out of pity. I want to be treated like everyone else, evaluated based on my actual abilities, not my disability. This is not merely an occasional experience. It occurs in nearly every social interaction. Even when people do not voice it, I can see it in their faces. They feel sorry for me, as if my life is over. But the reality is that I am living my life in my own way. I do not need their pity to remind me of what I already know. The psychological toll, more than just physical pain. Many people assume that the most difficult aspect of Erb'S palsy is the physical struggle, but in truth, the mental and emotional burden is far worse. Acknowledging that my body imposes limitations upon me, watching others perform the simplest tasks effortlessly, while I must exert twice the effort, it is a heavy burden on my heart. The hardest days are those when I feel helpless, when I require assistance with things I wish I could accomplish independently. Those are the moments when frustration, sadness, and sometimes even anger hit the hardest. Not because I do not accept myself, but because I wish life were just a little bit easier. Fear of the future. Will anyone ever accept me? One of my greatest fears is that I may never encounter someone who genuinely accepts me for who I am. How can anyone perceive me as a suitable choice for marriage when I sometimes struggle to see myself that way? In our society, marriage is often associated with perfection, with someone entirely capable, without flaws. And I cannot help but feel that I fall short of that standard. I constantly view myself as less than others, as if I am not enough. My confidence is shaky at best, and instead of embracing who I am, I often find myself avoiding situations where my condition may be noticed and evading conversations that could lead to awkward stares or unwanted pity. I wish I did not have to feel this way. I wish I could believe that someone would see me for more than just my arm, that they would look beyond my physical limitations and recognize everything else I have to offer. But deep down, I fear that my condition will always be a barrier, something that makes people hesitate before choosing me. The burden on my family, I am not the only one affected by this. My family experiences it alongside me. I observe them attempting to help. I see the concern in their eyes when they notice my pain, and I know they wish they could do more. That feeling, that silent acknowledgement that I am a source of anxiety, even if they never voice, it hurts in a way that words cannot express. Even when they do not articulate it, I know they bear the weight of my condition as well. They want to see me happy, independent, and free from pain, but they also understand that my life will never be as uncomplicated as they wish it to be. Sports and the never-ending pain exercise, something that should serve as a means to relieve stress and strengthen the body, is merely another struggle for me. Some exercises are impossible, others necessitate adjustments, and even when I discover something that works, the pain perpetually reminds me that I am different. A visible condition, and the mistake that ruined my life, Erb'S palsy, is not simply a hidden condition. It is quite evident. My hand did not develop properly, and the disparity in strength and size between my arms is apparent. This only adds to my challenges, making people immediately aware of my condition, resulting in more pity, more questions, and more circumstances I would prefer to avoid. And the worst part? This did not have to happen. This was entirely due to a medical mistake. The doctor who delivered me pulled me out by my arm during birth, despite the necessity for a C-section due to my mother's condition. However, he did not explain the risks nor inform her of how dangerous this could be. Instead, he continued to pull, damaging the nerves in my shoulder and leaving me with a lifelong disability. How can one careless medical decision rob someone of their future? How can a doctor make such a reckless choice without fully informing my family of the repercussions? This is my reality every single day. Each time I struggle with pain, each time I fail to accomplish something simple, I remember that this was not meant to be my fate. This resulted from someone else's negligence. Why am I sharing this? Because I wish to raise awareness about Erb'S palsy. Most individuals do not know about it or understand how significantly it impacts a person's life. They see someone who appears mostly normal but do not realize the battles they face daily. This is not about soliciting pity, it is about fostering understanding. If you know someone with Erb'S palsy, remember that they encounter challenges you may not perceive. And if you have it yourself, you are not alone. There are others who comprehend your pain, your frustrations, your fears. Together, we demonstrate that even when life is unjust, we can still navigate it with strength and purpose. Story 2. Attending my niece's birthday thrown by my ex-sister-in-law, despite family threats to disown me for it. I refuse to abandon the little girl I've cherished amid chaos. Can loving a child be worth possible family rifts? This is a lengthy post. I'm a 21-year-old female, and I truly believe people will need background details to fully understand my situation. The we I often refer to consists of my parents and me. To summarize, my cousin, whom I will refer to as Scott, is 25 years old and is essentially like a brother to me. He has 3 daughters, A 5 years old, B 3 years old, and C 1.5 years old. A and B are from his first wife, while C is from his current fiancé. A recently turned 5 2 weeks ago, and her mother, Scott's ex-wife, is hosting a birthday party this weekend. I am invited and plan to attend, as it is important to ensure that A feels loved and appreciated. However, the family received a text message stating that anyone who attends the ex-wife's party will be disowned because, and I quote, the fiancé said that it is disrespectful to me. This is because they held a birthday party for A, which they did, and essentially no one attended, leaving me heartbroken. While it may appear I am in a bad light on the surface, there is a significant backstory to consider. So please bear with me. Scott and his sister lived with my parents and grandparents off and on when I was younger due to their mother, my aunt, being a drug addict. When I was about 6 or 7 years old, my aunt got sober for a year, moved back in with Scott's father, and regained full custody. However, she moved about an hour away and cut off most contact. Although we attempted to maintain communication, we were often ignored until my father decided he did not want to beg for a relationship with his own sister. Fast forward a couple of years, my parents realized that they were all still using drugs, my aunt, Scott, and his sister. For my well-being, my parents continued to sever ties. This changed when my parents encountered my aunt at her job, and she was sober. She is now almost 7 years sober. We also discovered that Scott had married his ex-wife and that they were expecting A. Initially, they seemed to be doing well, and we genuinely wanted to support A. When it was born, it became evident that their lives were not as stable as they appeared. Scott was still deeply entrenched in addiction, barely held a job, and his ex-wife could not work because they could not afford childcare, leaving my aunt to financially support them. Soon after, they learned they were expecting B. While we were happy, we were also concerned. Approximately 5 months into the pregnancy, doctors identified severe health issues with B, necessitating multiple surgeries, a feeding tube, oxygen, and other forms of care. Toward the end of the ex-wife's pregnancy, Scott's situation had deteriorated significantly. We were taking a for at least 2 days a week while he was using drugs constantly, had no job, and had become abusive. After B was born, the situation worsened. Their home had nearly transformed into a drug den. Scott coerced his ex-wife into using drugs, claiming that if she refused, it indicated she intended to leave him and take his children. His behavior was undeniably abusive. I will not disclose what the ex-wife endured, as that is her story, but suffice it to say it was serious. She mustered the courage to leave when it was almost 3 and B was just over a year and a half old. She even permitted Scott to have almost shared custody of A and allowed visitations for B, but she would not let B stay overnight, as B required 24-hour specialized care. Then, Child Protective Services were called on Scott, resulting in him losing custody, but the ex-wife still facilitated visitations twice a week because she wanted what was best for her daughters. While Scott claimed to be attempting to regain custody, although his efforts were minimal and slow, he met his fiancée. Shortly after, he got her pregnant with C and did not inform us until C was about to be born, compelling us to conceal this information for the following 6 months, which he hid from his ex-wife due to our fear of losing contact with A and B. Subsequently, Scott and his ex-wife went to court, and custody terms were established. Scott was allowed every other weekend for approximately 6 hours, along with continued visitation with B. However, everything soon fell apart. Tragically, B passed away. Her story is long and incredibly heartbreaking, but she is now at peace. Scott never updated us during BTK's time in the hospital. The ex-wife did. He never invited us to say our goodbyes. The ex-wife did. It is important to note that during the 2-year custody battle, the only way we could see A was through the ex-wife, which naturally brought us close. After BTK's passing, we all grew closer. We met the fiancée and her other children, had cookouts, and shared time together. However, we also maintained contact with the ex-wife, partly to see A but also because we genuinely care about her. When Scott's custody was extended to one night every other weekend, we occasionally visited them at Scott and his fiancée's home. The more we interacted with the fiancée, the more we came to dislike her. She claims to be honest, yet she often appears rude and thoughtless. Her treatment of her children, especially A, is appalling. For example, she does not allow A to leave the bathroom until she has used it, even when A is crying and insisting that she does not need to go and is terrified of the toilet. However, we choose to maintain a relationship because this is not about Scott, the fiancé, or the ex-wife. It is about the children, even the fiancé's biological kids. To summarize, A's birthday party is this weekend. We are attending, as it is not about favoritism, but rather making sure A knows she is an amazing and wonderful little girl. We want to ensure she feels our love, regardless of which parent she is with. It pains me that Scott and his fiancée do not understand this. Do not misunderstand. I am saddened that I may lose C and the fiancé's biological children because of this. Yet, I am not truly a person to them yet. I am significant to A. I am the one who always buys her the best clothes. I am the one who consistently affirms how beautiful she is. And I am the one who rocked her to sleep on my 18th birthday because Scott was under the influence, and the ex-wife was exhausted from being in the hospital with B. Ultimately, I cannot lose A. I refuse to lose that little girl or let her believe that I love her any less than I do. I do not care whose feelings I hurt in the process, so I believe this pretty much summarizes my perspective. So, am I the antagonist in this situation? Story 3. Ada for being upset that my husband of 18 years left me alone in the hospital when I was bleeding internally. TLDR. My husband left me alone at the hospital when I had internal bleeding and might have required surgery. I am truly unhappy with how things unfolded last weekend, so I thought I would vent and see if anyone responds. I do not have any friends to discuss this matter with. I am a 43-year-old female who experienced severe abdominal pain on the lower right side of my abdomen one Saturday night. The pain was so intense that I considered going to the emergency room, but I have a slight phobia of hospitals and emergency room visits can be costly, so I refrained. Fortunately, the pain subsided somewhat by the next morning, so I tried to dismiss it, believing I had simply pulled a muscle or something. 2 days later, I discovered massive purple bruises on my abdomen, very near the location of the initial pain, which understandably alarmed me. I first visited my obstetrician-gynecologist to check if my intrauterine device had slipped and perforated something. Thankfully, my intrauterine device was intact, and there were no ovarian cysts or ruptures. She subsequently referred me to my primary care physician. After extensive examinations, painful ones, I might add, she sent me directly to the emergency room, even going so far as to contact the head nurse there to inform them of my symptoms and my impending arrival. Her suspicion was appendicitis, even though I had no nausea or any other symptoms typically associated with that condition. To cut a long story short, after scans, lab work, and testing were completed, I learned that I have a hematoma of the rectal sheath, a tear in the abdominal wall outside the colon, and the bruises were a result of internal bleeding caused by it. I arrived at the emergency room around 11:30 a.m. to noon on Friday and spent the following 10 hours there before a room became available for my admission. They were uncertain whether I would require surgery, and there was significant concern regarding additional internal bleeding as no one knew the cause of the initial bleeding. My husband, who is 49 years old, was at work at that time. He picked up our 7-year-old from school at 3:00 p.m. and returned home. His mother is retired and alone. Her husband passed away in April 2024 and enjoys spending time with the children. I also have a 23-year-old daughter, but he did not ask her to pick up our son or watch him so that he could accompany me. He waited until 7:30 p.m. to bring me food in the emergency room. I had not eaten all day as I had been fasting for blood work at my primary care appointment, stayed with me for about 30 minutes, and then left again. At that point, I was still uncertain whether I needed surgery, so I was unable to eat or drink anything after midnight. The following day, I did not see him until after my food and drink intake was allowed again, around 11:30 a.m. My hospital lunch was delivered approximately 20 minutes after he arrived, and he left shortly after my doctor provided his update. However, he missed the oncologist and hematologist, and I had to confront that terrifying prospect alone. My mother died of leukemia when I was 15 years old. He was not pleased with the doctor, which I completely understand. The doctor was indeed off-putting and borderline unprofessional, asking if my husband physically abused me while we were both present in the room after being asked this exact question at least 20 times by various hospital staff prior. I was even asked if there was anyone I wanted to restrict from visiting me in the hospital, and I replied no. He continued to dwell on the doctor's comment and was visibly upset, although he insisted he was not angry with me. I understand that it was an offensive remark, but I could not comprehend why that took precedence over my health and mental well-being. This was my first experience as a patient in a hospital, aside from the childbirth of my 2 children, and my previous interactions with hospitals have been anything but pleasant. Considering my mother's battle with cancer and my daughter's medical issues during her early years, I have spent an inordinate amount of time in medical facilities already. He kept bringing up the doctor's comment, then expressed frustration when the chaplain visited me after I had previously stated that I did not want to see the chaplain. I am pagan, which startled him a bit when he arrived, though that is another story. He then became upset regarding the costs that the hospital was billing the insurance company, not what they were charging us, but what they charged the insurance. I felt that throughout my time there, he only expressed frustration and anger. Although he kept claiming he was not upset with me, I felt as though everything revolved around his feelings. I was finally able to drive myself home from the hospital around 3:30 p.m. on Monday, concluding nearly 4 days in the hospital. My husband visited for 3 of those 4 days, staying for about 20 to 30 minutes each day. He has weekends off, by the way, and missed every doctor except for the one who upset him. Upon returning home, I took a shower to wash off the lingering scent of disinfectant, and then it was as if everything returned to normal, as though I had never been away. My son hugged me before running off understandably. He is 7. My husband played video games until dinner, then ate and assisted with some of the dishes without offering suggestions like, "Let me handle that, you're not supposed to exert yourself," or "Sit down, and I will take care of dinner since you just got out of the hospital." I am concerned about my future. Is this an indication of what my life may be like moving forward? Cancer is prevalent on both sides of my family, in various forms, so I suppose that means I will undergo chemotherapy alone and possibly die alone in a hospital bed at some point. I'm attempting to move forward, but I also feel some resentment toward him. Whatever happened to the commitment of in sickness and in health? I cannot help but feel let down by him. I was alone in a frightening place, uncertain about what was wrong or what would happen to me, and he appeared uninterested in providing companionship, help to calm my fears or support. Not once did he reassure me by saying, "It's okay, you will be fine. We will get through this." Instead, it seemed as though the focus was solely on his frustrations and emotions. Now I feel conflicted. Perhaps I was being selfish. After all, he could not actually do anything to assist me while I was there, and he was with our son. However, where do you draw the line between selfishness and the need for support? Am I the antagonist for wanting my husband to be more supportive during my hospital stay? Story 4. Am I the a-hole for feeling that my mom is unsupportive despite what she's done for me? Am I the antagonist here? My mother still does my laundry, irons my clothes, and prepares meals. Sometimes I assist her with this. I am a 21-year-old female working as a freelancer while pursuing my bachelor's degree and currently completing an internship. She advised me to prioritize my work. My only household task is washing the dishes. However, she consistently opposes my aspirations and plans. After I graduated from high school, she did not even consider assisting me in attending college. She expected me to work, possibly to help contribute to the household income. She was aware that I could not rely on my father for further education, yet when she inherited a piece of land, her only thought was to build a house. I made a significant effort to enroll in university the following year, even while providing a small contribution to the household. Eventually, she assisted me by paying for one semester of my education. Now, 4 years later, my sister is about to graduate from high school, and my mother is already planning to help cover her immigration and registration fees for working abroad without a second thought. To my mother, I never seem to hold value unless it is linked to money. When I share my aspirations with her, and they do not coincide with her desires, she reacts awkwardly. However, if my dreams already yield income, she states, "I always pray for your luck," as if that implies she supports me only when I am financially successful. Last week, my mother was busy, so my younger sister ironed our clothes. My mother thanked her and I asked, "If that were me, would you express gratitude?" She replied, "Do you thank me when I do your laundry?" My initial response was to say, "It is your responsibility as a parent, but I have already taken on some of your responsibilities." I held my tongue because I was on the verge of tears. Instead, she remarked that at my age, she had accomplished much more difficult tasks than I ever have. Can you see the difference? When it comes to my sister, my mother genuinely acknowledges her efforts, but when it is me, she never recognizes what I do, regardless of its significance. For example, last year, I received a 6-month scholarship for a course from an internationally recognized company worth thousands of dollars. Additionally, I was accepted for an internship at a prestigious company in my country. All my mother cared about was the internship because I would receive a stipend. She did not regard the scholarship, despite it being the reason I secured the internship. Am I the villain in this situation? I sometimes think that if I do not work, she will not be willing to do my laundry and other household chores because she has only mentioned that I should focus on my work while I am pursuing my bachelor's degree. I intend to pursue a master's degree immediately after graduation. Once again, my mother appears to disapprove, but when I say that I want to work, she responds in a pleasant tone. Moreover, if she expects me to support the family financially, why did she tell me that no man will ever marry a wealthy woman? I mean, if I have to support myself, plan for my future family, and assist my family financially, I need to be wealthy. Edit. I realize I did not provide enough context earlier. When I asked, "If that were me, would you express gratitude?" I meant that if I were my sister's age, would she appreciate it if I did that? I never received thanks like my sister did. Edit. I acknowledge that I may have miscommunicated. If you observe the sentences with a period, I want to convey that after I graduated, I worked diligently to save money to pay for my college tuition while also contributing to our household income. Some individuals believe I live there for free. This is not true, as I work to fund my education, support myself, and aid our household. I have done this since I was a teenager. Edit. Thank you very much to everyone for your interest in my post. From harsh comments to supportive ones, it seems that everyone is helping me gain clarity. I would like to extend my gratitude to those who took the time to write lengthy replies and respond to my comments. I have reached the conclusion that my mother has her own way of displaying support and love, primarily through acts of service. I, on the other hand, value words of affirmation because I take language seriously. For instance, receiving thanks carries great significance for me. I cannot feel entitled to my mother's assistance as her responsibility since I am now an adult. However, I cannot refuse to accept that help as part of my growth in my 20s. I deserve it and genuinely need it not because it is her duty, but because I am her child, and she still wishes to help me in her own manner. I consider myself fortunate to experience this support, as not many individuals receive such encouragement. My previous mindset mistakenly viewed this as solely my mother's obligation, but that is not the case. Nonetheless, I still feel that she cannot support me in the way I desire. It is now both my mother's and my responsibility to communicate that. Additionally, her emphasis on financial matters may have influenced my perspective. Based on the responses from certain individuals who provided extensive replies, I will heed your advice. My life is within my control, and if others impact me, it is because I allow it. Yes, it seems that my mother values me primarily through a monetary lens, which is why I feel a sense of entitlement when it comes to contributing financially. However, the constructive thing I can do is to detach my sense of self-worth from my mother's valuation of me. This may require significant effort to prevent future triggers. To add context here, I did not fully grasp this mindset previously because, within my social circle, middle class, being female in my culture and religion expects us to be provided for by our parents, even after marriage. Therefore, in my community, I receive considerable praise for being financially responsible from a young age, especially as a female, and my mother doing my chores is generally acceptable because I contribute financially to the household. There exists a gender-based perspective in my community. Thus, I should not feel entitled to my mother's assistance, but rather, I should cultivate a sense of gratitude. Thank you for broadening my perspective. Edit. Many people suggest that I should move out, and I will. For your information, my parents were the ones who did not allow me to leave. I may not have expressed gratitude for stating that it was her responsibility, but you all focus on my actions toward my mother without considering how her actions have valued me solely in terms of money. Story 5. My wife's boss abused company funds for a dolphin swim. I proved it and got her fired. Now, she sends mean texts while facing financial chaos after losing her job. Was it worth the risk for Mary to expose the truth? This is a story about how my wife and I got her boss fired. For reference, I will refer to my wife as Mary and her boss as Karen. I know, original, right? Summary at the bottom. Mary started working for a college 5 years ago as an administrative assistant. She was assigned various tasks, one of which was to write the school handbook. In the handbook, she noted that staff were required to dedicate time to professional development. After a few years and several promotions, she secured a managerial position in the department and initiated a program to ensure that all staff members under her supervision had approved time to attend professional development conferences. Karen consistently opposed this idea, but one day Mary decided to approach Karen's boss, whom I will refer to as Bob. Bob is fantastic. Once Mary established her position at the college, she circumvented Karen and obtained approval from Bob for all department staff to attend conferences. For approximately the next year, everyone had the opportunity to choose any conference across the continental United States to attend at the company's expense. Employees returned with notes taken from every session they attended, attached with a conference itinerary, which they submitted to their direct supervisor as proof of attendance. Each employee was also required to present key points learned from their conference at a weekly departmental meeting. It was a straightforward morale-boosting opportunity until someone decided to abuse it. Karen had been boasting to other department directors, as well as to Mary, about swimming with dolphins during her recent trip to a conference. Mary initially thought little of it, as there is typically a free morning or afternoon available at these conferences. During our nightly discussions, my wife mentioned this, and having been raised in Orlando, where Karen chose to attend a conference, I immediately asked, "Where?" Mary responded with a well-known location operated by a well-known company with a whale logo. I quickly remarked that they close at 5:30 p.m. When did Karen have time for this? Mary, who had access to Karen's itinerary, was astonished when she realized that the conference Karen attended did not have any free time during business hours that would allow for the dolphins' swimming activity. Mary experienced an intense clerical fury as she retrieved Karen's full travel itinerary, including details for the flight, hotel, conference, and other reimbursements. The school conducts most departmental work online, allowing access to the school's server remotely from secured or approved devices, such as Mary's phone. She also checked the website for the dolphins swimming to verify its hours of operation. According to the submitted records, it was impossible for Karen to have swum with dolphins during the experience's normal business hours without missing part of the conference, and according to Karen's itinerary, she was supposed to attend all sessions. Mary had worked diligently to earn the privilege of traveling the country for conferences, and Karen had squandered it all. Ultimately, Mary documented everything, attached the itinerary documents, included photographs of the encounter, as well as others from theme parks that Karen had failed to mention from social media, provided the hours of operation, and sent all of this information to Bob. Mary texted me about an hour after she arrived at work the following day to say Bob was furious. He was in the process of questioning everyone to whom Karen had boasted to verify if the stories were consistent. A few days later, Karen was terminated from the company for attending only one session of the 3-day conference, lying about her submitted report, misusing company funds for travel, hotel, and food while enjoying theme parks, and for submitting a time card to receive payment for those activities. Although Mary's name remained anonymous throughout this process, Karen seemed to blame Mary nonetheless. Karen sent hateful and threatening messages to Mary several times until the school issued a cease and desist order. To make matters worse, it seems that Karen's husband was unreliable, so not only did Karen have to trade in her large SUV for a smaller vehicle, but she had also just signed on a new house mere days before her termination, leaving her without an income to support the home. I am not entirely cynical. People should not be homeless. However, Karen had taken credit for much of Mary's work, forced Mary to manage Karen's workload while she was absent, and committed numerous other acts of misconduct that I cannot recall due to the extensive pillow talk. It goes without saying that Karen faced the consequences of her actions. Summary: I suggested to my wife the idea that her boss used company funds for personal vacation purposes. I was correct, and my wife reported the incident, leading to an embarrassing termination.